It was August 22nd, 2017, when the news hit the bodybuilding world like a bomb. Dallas McCarver, one of the brightest young talents of the new generation, had been found dead in his Florida apartment. He was just 26, right at the peak of his career and preparing for Mr. Olympia, the biggest stage in the sport. How could someone so full of life and promise be gone so soon? That was the question that shook fans, athletes, and the entire fitness community. The shock wasn't limited to the United States. Within hours, news sites, sports pages, and fan accounts spread the story worldwide. For many, the first reaction was disbelief. It seemed impossible that this charismatic giant, always smiling and full of energy, had suddenly left the stage of life. Some even thought it was just a rumor, a case of mistaken identity, or sloppy reporting. But it wasn't. The official confirmation came quickly, and with it, a void that was hard to fill. Dallas wasn't just a promising athlete. He symbolized hope, inspiration, and even a new standard for the sport. Many saw him as the next big champion, someone who could leave his mark the way Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ronnie Coleman, and Jay Cutler had before him. His loss wasn't only about a competitor, it was about a symbol still being built. The first reports pointed to a domestic accident, a supposed choking while eating. The image of a 6-foot, 1.85 m, 300-pound, 140-plus kg, giant collapsing in his own kitchen was shocking in its fragility. How could someone so powerful be taken down by something so ordinary? That contrast made the tragedy even harder to accept. Very quickly, the question shifted from "is this real?" to what really happened. The truth would only come later, with the autopsy results. But until then, mystery and speculation filled the air. Close friends took to social media, some in tears, others in shock. Coaches and veteran athletes paid tribute, describing Dallas as a bull on stage and a heart of gold off it. And fans, who had followed his meteoric rise, flooded posts with messages of sadness and disbelief. What struck the most, though, was the feeling that something had been cut short. Dallas still had so much left to show. It was like watching a movie that suddenly ends before the climax. The promise of future glory was replaced by a painful reminder. Behind the muscles and the fame, there was a vulnerable human being, subject to the same fragility and struggles as the rest of us. And that's exactly why his story deserves to be told. Not just as a tribute to a talent gone too soon, but as a wake-up call, a chance to reflect on how far it's worth going in the pursuit of perfection. Do you remember where you were when you heard about Dallas McCarver's death? Share it in the comments, and let's revisit his journey together, chapter by chapter, to understand how a small-town kid from America became one of the most talked-about names in the bodybuilding world. Before becoming a giant on stage, Dallas McCarver was just a small-town kid. Born in Memphis, Tennessee, he grew up in a rural community called Blue Goose, surrounded by farms and open fields. His childhood was built on simplicity, hard work, and family values. While other kids spent hours on video games, Dallas was feeding cattle, fixing fences, and hauling heavy loads. It was a routine that demanded strength, discipline, and resilience, qualities that would later become the backbone of his identity. That rural lifestyle shaped his character in a unique way. Out there were no shortcuts. The work had to be done, rain or shine. This mindset would stay with him for life, especially in bodybuilding, a sport that demands sacrifice and consistency. But back then, Dallas had no thoughts of becoming a pro athlete. For him, it was all about helping his family and having fun with his sister Katie, his inseparable companion, who always supported and admired his determination. Despite his above-average strength, Dallas wasn't the most confident kid. Behind that big frame was a young man full of insecurities, constantly feeling like he had to prove himself, to others and to himself. That sense of not being enough would follow him through different stages of his life, becoming both a powerful fuel and a shadow hard to shake off. Maybe it was that mix of insecurity and desire for recognition that pushed him into such an almost obsessive dedication to the sport. It was football that gave Dallas his first taste of sports passion. Like so many kids in America, he dreamed of the gridiron, trained harder than his teammates, and impressed his coaches with his drive. Effort was never missing. Every practice felt like a championship game. Soon, he earned the nickname Big Country, because of his massive size and that hard-working spirit straight out of rural life. But raw talent wasn't enough to hide his inner fears. Even while standing out in practices and games, Dallas often felt out of place. He constantly compared himself to others, believing he had to be stronger, faster, and more tireless. That hunger to improve, born out of insecurity, was what led him to pick up weights, at first just to help with football. What he didn't realize then was that he had just discovered the true passion of his life. The hard work on the farm and the intensity of football practice ended up combining to build an impressive physique. By the time he was 14, he already looked older and stronger than most of his classmates. Coaches saw him as a prodigy, someone destined for greatness, maybe even the NFL. But contrary to what everyone believed, Dallas was starting to feel that his future wasn't on the field, but in the weight room, where there were no dropped passes or blown coverages, just him and the mirror. That transition was still ahead, but Dallas's roots made it clear who he really was. A hard-working kid, forged in the countryside, driven by family values and effort, but also marked by deep insecurities. And maybe that mix was the spark that pushed him to chase something bigger, something that could prove to the world, and to himself, that he was special. There comes a point in life when a single decision changes the course forever. For Dallas McCarver, that turning point came when he decided to leave football behind and dive headfirst into bodybuilding. Even with scholarships and promising opportunities on the field, something inside told him the iron was his true path. The gym offered a world where results depended only on him. No coaches, no teammates, just discipline, sweat, and willpower. At first, Dallas treated bodybuilding as a way to keep busy and stay out of trouble. But soon, that side activity became a passion. By 2011, at just 19 years old, he stepped on stage for the first time. The result? A win right out of the gate at the NPC Hub City Fitness Quest, weighing in at over 240 pounds, about 110 kilograms, in incredible condition. That was the first sign he wasn't just another curious beginner. He was a prodigy who could change the game. What stood out the most was how naturally Dallas achieved what took others years of grinding. Still a teenager, he was already outgrowing his peers, with genetics and structure that put him ahead of the curve. When he competed again just weeks later, he won once more, proving it wasn't luck. It was clear, that small-town kid from Tennessee was born to be on stage. It was around this time Dallas made a risky decision, turning to steroids to speed up his progress. It was the price many athletes were willing to pay, though one that would take its toll down the road. For him, though, there was no hesitation. If he wanted to be the best, he had to push the limits. And the results came fast. Every time he walked on stage, he looked more impressive than the last. In 2012, at just 21 years old, and in only his third competition, Dallas earned the coveted pro card at the NPC North Americans. He won the super heavyweight division and took the overall title, a rare achievement for someone so young. The last to do something similar had been Sean Ray back in 1987. Fans and experts alike were stunned. How could someone so young bring the size, density, and confidence of a seasoned veteran? With his pro card in hand, Dallas was no longer just a rising star. He was officially part of bodybuilding's elite. Supplement companies came knocking, photo shoot invitations poured in, and his face started showing up in major magazines. The boy from Blue Goose had become a phenomenon, now known as Big Country, far beyond his hometown. That explosive start was only the beginning of the legend. Dallas seemed unstoppable, as if the future was ready to be handed to him on a silver platter. But did this meteoric rise also come with a hidden weight? After all, the faster you climb, the heavier the pressure, and the more dangerous the fall can be. After earning his pro card, Dallas McCarver was thrown straight into the spotlight. He was seen as the next Jay Cutler, the young gun who, in just a few years, could dominate the Mr. Olympia stage. Magazines plastered his face, sponsors treated him like the new crown jewel, and fans expected to witness the birth of a legend. The hype was real, but with it came the crushing weight of expectation. And Dallas himself seemed to believe he was destined to be the future of the sport. In 2015 came the big test, his debut at Mr. Olympia. At just 24, he was one of the youngest competitors ever to step on that stage. The size was jaw-dropping, well over 300 pounds, around 136 kilograms, packed on a massive frame, but it didn't take long to see the flaws. His conditioning wasn't on par with veterans like Phil Heath, Sean Roden, and Big Ramy. He finished in 13th place, far from the spotlight. For someone who was used to winning early, that result hit hard. The loss left a bitter taste. For the first time, Dallas realized that being big wasn't enough to win. Olympia demanded refinement, proportions, razor-sharp conditioning, and flawless presentation. The kid once called a prodigy now had to face the reality that he was only just beginning. Many athletes might have settled, but not Dallas. He saw it as a challenge, an opportunity to prove he could rise to the top. Searching for answers, he decided to change his prep. He stepped away from Haney Rambod, the famous coach known for shaping champions, and teamed up with Matt Jansen, a close friend and up-and-coming trainer. The plan was to fix the details, tighten the waist, build up the back, and present a more balanced look. Dallas wanted to show he wasn't just hype, that he could evolve quickly and silence the critics. At the 2016 Olympia, he did better, moving up a few spots to place 8th. It was a big achievement for someone so young, but for Dallas, it felt like failure. He didn't just want to crack the top 10, he wanted to win. Behind the scenes, he admitted he cried like a kid, frustrated that he hadn't lived up to his own expectations. It was a clear reflection of the immense pressure he put on himself. That self-demand only grew more visible. In interviews, he spoke openly about the fear of being a failure, about the constant need to prove something with every show. Dallas never allowed himself to relax. Every critique hit like a punch. Every comment on his physique felt like a personal attack. It was as if nothing was ever good enough. And while that mindset pushed him forward, it also drained him deeply. The contrast between hype and reality was now clear. On one hand, the prodigy, hailed as the future of the sport. On the other, a young man battling insecurities, desperately trying to meet impossible expectations. And in the middle of it all lingered a question. How much pressure can someone put on themselves before it breaks their health and happiness? In 2017, Dallas McCarver entered the most decisive year of his career. Determined to silence critics and prove he could indeed be a future Mr. Olympia, he switched coaches again, this time joining forces with Chad Nichols, the same coach who had guided Ronnie Coleman to dominance. At just 25, Dallas didn't want to wait anymore. His mindset was clear. He needed results now, no matter the cost. That urgency would end up defining his path. The first big test came at the Arnold Classic, Ohio. Dallas walked on stage weighing an incredible 314 pounds, 142 kilograms, heavier than some of the biggest freaks in bodybuilding history. His presence was overwhelming. Massive arms, thick calves, and aggressive posing that fired up the crowd. Without question, it was the best physique he had ever displayed. Many believed this was going to be his crowning moment. But on the other side was Cedric McMillan, an athlete with classic lines, balance, and flawless presentation. In the head-to-head battle, Cedric came out on top. Dallas took second place, an incredible achievement for a young athlete, but to him, it was bitter. "I don't train to be second," he said. For Dallas, that podium wasn't proof of progress, but of frustration. Still, the result made one thing clear. He was among the best, and his name had to be taken seriously. There was no time to celebrate. Dallas headed straight into an international tour, the Arnold Classic New Zealand, followed by the Arnold Classic Australia. It was his first time traveling alone overseas to compete, battling exhaustion from long flights, strict dieting, and constant prep. The grind showed just how lonely the sport could be. In interviews, he admitted he felt the weight of being on his own, but always insisted he was ready to give it everything he had. And then, in Australia, the unexpected happened. During the prejudging round, Dallas lost his balance, stumbled, and nearly collapsed right there on stage. The shock was immediate, a 300-plus pound athlete faltering in front of the audience. Stage staff rushed to help him off, and the crowd sat in heavy silence, whispers of concern spreading through the arena. No one had expected to see Big Country in such a vulnerable moment. Backstage, Dallas pulled himself together and tried to play it off. He explained that he'd been battling a respiratory infection that had turned into bronchitis, and that the dehydration from prep had left him vulnerable. To him, it was just a setback. To fans and experts, though, it was a red flag. Persistent coughing, extreme fatigue, a worn-out look, signs that something much more serious was happening inside his body. Still, Dallas's mindset was always to push forward, no matter the cost. Instead of treating the collapse as a warning, he saw it as just another obstacle to overcome. While fans began questioning his health, he doubled down in interviews, insisting he'd come back stronger. After the collapse in Australia, the logical step would have been to slow down. But Dallas didn't see it that way. He took a short break, following the advice of some former coaches, but soon jumped right back into heavy training. Not long after, he appeared at a guest posing, looking even bigger than before. The crowd was blown away by his sheer size, but something wasn't right. He was out of breath, struggling to finish even the simplest poses. By the end, it was clear he wasn't the same athlete fans wanted to see. Videos of that night spread quickly. Many fans wondered if it was just fatigue from pushing too hard, or if something more serious was going on. Soon after, new reports surfaced. Dallas was coughing uncontrollably, visibly irritated, his face swollen and flushed. The sharp, youthful features he was known for had given way to a tired, altered appearance, almost unrecognizable. The change was so obvious that even close friends started worrying. Some tried to step in. A fellow athlete recalled calling Dallas just days before his death, warning him that he was changing too fast and that it wasn't healthy. "You don't look like yourself anymore, not just physically, but mentally too," he said. Dallas's response: hanging up the phone mid-conversation. It was as if admitting weakness was impossible for him. The charismatic, open giant was now shutting himself off more and more. And this wasn't just stubbornness. Dallas was under enormous pressure. He carried the weight of being called the future of Mr. Olympia. Sponsors, fans, even rivals expected him to bring a bigger, freakier version of himself every year. For a young man with insecurities, that expectation was both fuel and poison. He pushed himself as if every show were his last chance to prove his worth. The isolation only made things worse. Living alone in Florida, far from family, Dallas kept a very small circle of trust. Behind the scenes, he talked about the loneliness of the sport, how he spent hours at home with no one around. Despite the big smile on stage and the charisma for fans, there was a darker side to his daily life. Brutal training sessions, risky protocols, and almost no emotional support system. The stage was always packed, but life outside it was increasingly empty. And then there was the relentless self-criticism. Dallas wasn't satisfied with just being good. In his mind, if he wasn't the best, he was a failure. That mentality drove him to train beyond his limits, to push even when his body begged for rest. It wasn't only about competing, it was about proving to himself that he could crush any barrier. Sadly, that mindset kept him from listening to his own body. All those warning signs, persistent coughs, bleeding, swelling, extreme exhaustion, mood changes, painted a clear picture. But in bodybuilding, where whatever it takes is practically a motto, Dallas ignored them all. At that point, things were already spiraling out of control. On the night of August 21st, 2017, Dallas McCarver seemed to be living a normal day of prep. He hit the gym hard, impressing everyone around him by pressing 160-pound, 72 kilograms, dumbbells for multiple reps as if it were just another routine exercise. Later, he stopped by his favorite restaurant and even spent some downtime at the beach. Everything suggested he was focused, motivated, and determined to bring his best package yet to Mr. Olympia. Around 10 p.m., Dallas spoke with his girlfriend at the time, WWE star Dana Brooke. He told her he was about to eat dinner and then get some rest. It was a normal conversation, no signs of alarm, just another night in prep. Dana, without knowing it, had just heard the last words from the giant she called her guardian angel. Hours later, things went terribly wrong. Dallas was found unconscious in his Florida apartment by Josh, a friend and training partner who had just arrived. The scene was devastating. His body on the floor, face down, with food scattered around him. Everything suggested he had collapsed while eating, alone, with no one there to help. The attempt to save him was immediate. Josh called for help, and Dallas was rushed to the hospital as fast as possible. But sadly, it was already too late. At 10:03 a.m. on August 22, 2017, his death was officially confirmed. The bodybuilding world had lost one of its brightest talents. At just 26 years old, right in the prime of his youth. The first reports claimed he had choked on food, an explanation that seemed tragic but plausible given the scene found in his apartment. Still, to fans and friends, that answer felt incomplete. How could someone so young and athletic simply lose his life in such a sudden and ordinary way? While the official answers were still pending, the mood was one of disbelief. Close friends and training partners flooded social media with tributes, many still in shock. For those who knew him, it was hard to accept that a young man so full of energy, someone who seemed to carry the world on his shoulders while always sharing a smile, could be gone overnight. Dallas McCarver's final night became a painful symbol, a reminder of how quickly life can change. From an intense, powerful workout to devastating news that rocked the bodybuilding community, all in just a matter of hours. A brutal contrast that made people wonder, was someone so obsessed with being invincible blind to the fact that his body was already crying out for help? 3 months after his passing, the official autopsy report revealed a reality that was hard to swallow. It ruled out choking and confirmed the cause of death as an acute cardiac event, sudden and devastating. His heart, which should have weighed a little over 300 grams, about 11 ounces, in normal conditions, weighed a staggering 833 grams, nearly 3 times the expected size for a man his age. That fact alone was shocking, but it wasn't the only one. Dallas's liver was badly compromised, showing clear signs of strain and damage consistent with long-term use of substances that put heavy stress on the body. His lungs showed scarring and fibrosis, suggesting he had been dealing with respiratory issues far longer than he had admitted publicly. All of it painted the picture of a body pushed far past its natural limits for years on end. Another detail that stood out was the hormone levels found. His testosterone readings were astronomically high, way beyond what would be considered normal, even for an athlete in prep. It was undeniable proof of heavy anabolic steroid use and chemical enhancement. Though Dallas had never hidden the fact that he used gear, the report made it clear his protocols had reached extreme levels, enough to accelerate irreversible damage. The combination of these factors was a ticking time bomb. An enlarged heart, weakened organs, and constant pressure from brutal training and contest prep had created an unsustainable situation. Dallas's body had been flashing warning signs, but in the pursuit of glory, those warnings went ignored. His death wasn't the result of one random accident. It was the accumulated outcome of choices made over the years. For experts, the case wasn't unique. Other athletes had suffered similar fates, but the death of someone so young, so promising, hit much harder. He hadn't even reached 30, yet his body carried the marks of decades of wear and tear. In that sense, the autopsy was a cruel snapshot of the reality of extreme bodybuilding. The revelations split opinions. Many fans didn't want to believe Dallas had become just another victim of excess, choosing instead to remember him as the charismatic, dedicated kid they admired. Others saw the report as undeniable proof that when the sport is pushed to dangerous extremes, the price can be far too high. The debates were heated, but everyone agreed on one thing: the loss was irreparable. The harsh truth of the autopsy showed that behind the image of an invincible giant, Dallas was human, subject to mistakes, vulnerabilities, and the consequences of his own choices. His death wasn't only a personal tragedy, it was also a warning for athletes and fans alike. How far is it really worth going in the name of greatness? That's the question that still echoes today. Dallas McCarver's death left a void that's hard to fill, but it also planted seeds of reflection. Soon after the tragedy, tributes began appearing at competitions, across social media, and in bodybuilding magazines. Athletes who had shared the stage with him dedicated victories in his honor, while fans worldwide shared memories of meeting the big guy with the easy smile. For many, Dallas wasn't just a competitor. He was an inspiration for the humble, genuine way he treated everyone who crossed his path. His legacy, however, goes far beyond trophies or stage shots. Dallas showed that charisma and humanity can walk side by side with the strict discipline of bodybuilding. He once dreamed of starting a school for kids in underprivileged communities, proof of the size of his heart outside the sport. That side of him, often overshadowed by the size of his muscles, made people remember him not just as an athlete, but as a man of true generosity. At the same time, his story serves as a warning. The autopsy revealed the price of excess and the mindset of whatever it takes. Dallas was young, talented, and driven, but ignoring his body's warning signs cost him his life. For athletes and fans, the message is clear. Health can't be sacrificed for medals or recognition. Sports should build lives, not cut them short. Another striking point is the weight of psychological pressure. Dallas's insecurities and his relentless self-criticism showed how bodybuilding, despite its image of strength and confidence, can be a lonely and cruel sport. People see the muscles, the lights, the glory, but behind it all there are doubts, fears, and silent battles. Acknowledging this emotional side is essential so that other young athletes don't repeat the same mistakes. The tributes that poured in also reinforced an important message. You can admire greatness without ignoring flaws. Many champions remembered that Dallas had the potential to be Mr. Olympia, but his true greatness was in the way he treated people. That memory keeps alive the image of an athlete who, though gone too soon, left a lasting mark on the hearts of those who knew him. For fans, the lesson is twofold. First, to value your idols while they're still here, recognizing not only their victories, but also their struggles. Second, to understand that bodybuilding is more than the stage. It's a lifestyle that has to be balanced with health, well-being, and responsibility. Dallas became both an example of dedication and a symbol of caution. The journey of Dallas McCarver is both inspiring and heartbreaking. He showed the world how talent and dedication could turn a small-town kid into a bodybuilding star, but he also left behind a warning that ignoring limits can come at a steep price. His story isn't just about muscles and titles. It's about dreams, insecurities, and the search for recognition, something we can all relate to in one way or another. Now I want to hear from you. What touched you most about Dallas's life? Was it his relentless dedication, his charisma off stage, or the lesson about taking care of your health? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective makes this space even richer. If this video made you think or moved you in any way, don't forget to hit that like button. That simple gesture helps the channel grow and reach more people who also love the world of bodybuilding and its stories. And if you'd like to support us even more, consider becoming a channel member. Oh, and of course, if you're not subscribed yet, do it now and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any new videos. Always packed with stories, insights, and lessons from the sport we all love. On the end screen, you'll see another video I know you'll enjoy. Just click and keep going with us on this journey, diving into yet another incredible story from the bodybuilding world. So, support the channel with a like, become a member if you can, leave your comment, and above all, stay with us. Because here, every story we tell is also an inspiration for all of us. See you in the next video.